Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today we are going to create a basic to-do app using React.js in 2023. Now this tutorial is for the person who does know some basic things about React.js but want to get started with some sort of application. Here we will learn some basic usage of the React.js properties and also we'll learn about the context API of the React.js so we can deal with some data store. Finally, we will store data in local storage to persist the data, so when user refreshes the page, data will still be there. Now let's see the final version of our app and then we will start creating from scratch. So this is the final application that we are going to create. Now this is very basic React to do applications where we can actually add some to dos from this input field. Let's say wake up at 7 a.m. maybe have some breakfast, get ready for the work. So this kind of a thing we can add, and you can see those things has been added below. Now there are two options. We can mark it as done and we can also delete something. Let's say we can delete this one and let's say add learn React JS, so it will be added below. Now this data is actually persisted, as you can see if you go to the application tab of the browser, and you can see there is the local storage and there is our local URL, so localhost 3000. And when we go there, we will have some keys, and this to do's is the key from our app where we're actually persisting the data or saving the data whatever we have added. So we have added these three pieces of data, and you can see that has been added in a JSON stringify format where we have some unique ID, title, and the completed tag. So you can see this has been marked as true because we have checked it, and other two are not true, like false, because we haven't checked the checkbox. Now if I refresh the page, you can see the added data has been staying there. It has been persisted because we are using the facility of the local storage, so that we can persist the data when we even refresh the page. Now we can delete all the things and there will be a basic message that there is no to do has been found. I have also added a basic validation as well, like if the field is blank and we try to add something, there will be a pop-up message that field cannot be blank and nothing will happen. So this will be our final React application. So let's get started and creating from the scratch. So let's open the code editor. I'm using VS Code. You can use whatever you want. So I have already created a folder called React to do YT. Now let's install the React application. First I have opened the integrated terminal from the VS Code, and as you know, we need to run npx create react app, and because we are into the inside the folder already, so we can pass the dot. If we click enter, then this npx will create a React application for us. So let's wait for that. Alright, so the npm installation is done and we have our project. So let's just expand something. So we have this package.json where we have so it has been, the npx has dealt with it, and we have this source folder where we have bunch of files, and we have this publics as well. So you can see from this package.json we have these scripts to run. So if we run npm run start, then the server will start. So let's do that. Npm run start, so it should run it. Let's wait for some time, and you can see into the localhost 3000 it has been started running. So this is the basic React page that it's been given when we install it for the first time. Now I actually do not need many of the things, so let's remove those things. Let's say this, let's open this app.js, and we actually can remove everything because we do not need these things, right? And I actually love to have 4 tabs, so let's just change it. All right, let's just do some adjustments, and we also do not need this logo. We can actually delete it from here as well. We do not need this index css as well. So open app.css, we do not need any of this for now, and we have the error for index.css, so let's go there, and let's remove this index css as well from here. Rest of the thing looks okay to me, and let's keep the public as it is. So let's open it, and we have this fresh installation, nothing is there. Let's open the app.js and add an h1 tag like so, and let's say hello React, and it should be here. All right, so far so good. Our installation is completed. Now quickly let's do some folder structure for our project. So inside the source, let's add a folder called components, and inside the components we'll have some files. The first one I'm going to add is add todo.jsx. This one is for to add the to do input field so that we can add some to dos, and the next one will be a single to do.jsx, so it will be the iteration or the single added to do. And another file we're gonna create is for to do list, so which will be responsible to show all the to do lists together. Also, I'm going to create another folder inside the src which is called context, and this will be the use of context from React, so we can name it like to do context.jsx. all right, okay, so let's close everything and just open the app.js. So here how our structure will be is actually, let's remove this, and let's add a class name here. Let's say container. Later we'll add some css with that, and let's add an h1 tag. So let's call it to do application, and let's have a class name here as well for the later css use. Let's say it app title. All right, now here how we want to structure it is actually, if you can remember, we have the add to do input box at the top, and then we have the list of the to dos. So actually what we can do, we can maybe let's imagine we want to structure the main app like this. So add to do, and below we can have the to do list, right? So with the add to do component, we'll add the input field, and will allow the user to add the to-dos, and with the to-do list component we will show the list of the to-dos. So we have already added the components here. You can see the add to do and the to-do list. So let's import those things. So import add to do from components, then add to do, and similarly import to do list from components and the to do list. Now obviously there is nothing into those components yet, so there will be no visible outcome here, so there will be some errors as well. And if you refresh, there is actually nothing right now. So let's go, if we just, let's say, uncomment these two things, right, and we can see these to-do applications that is coming from the title. Now let's go into the add to do, and let's open that. So in add to do we will use some things that is coming from the React, but let's at first create the add to do method, and it will be an arrow function obviously, and at the bottom we need to export it as well. Export default add to do. Alright, now inside the add to do, let's return something that we can actually see. So what we can return, let's add a fragment. So first thing, let's add a div container with the class name of maybe form input container, not in out, input container, and inside that let's add an input with the value of something, and maybe the class, we can add the class name, let's say form input, and let's add a placeholder for now, let's say add to do. So this will be the input field, and let's add a button as well, and here let's just say add, and let's add the type button, and maybe you can keep a class name to form button. So this is the visibility of add to do. Let's go back into the app.js and uncomment these things. Just uncomment this to-do list because this is not yet into our system. So we have this add to do. Now if we go, and you can see we already have the field and the add button, and we have the titles as well. So we have some sort of visibilities already. Now let's add some more functionalities on that. So we have like so let's think about the project for a moment, what actually we are going to do. So what we need to do is to add some sort of titles from this field, and when we click on the add field or add button, we need to set the title and save it in some sort of global place from where we can access the data and show the data through the to-do lists. Now so for the title, what we can actually need, we need some sort of state. So let's do const, and let's have title and set title, and we can use the state. so it will be added automatically when we use it. So use state and the title at the beginning, it will be blank. Now this value should be, sorry, it shouldn't be here, my bad, it should be into the add to do. So we have this state by which we can update the title from this input. Now we actually need some sort of connection from here, so we can say on change, right? On change we can generate a function and we can say set title, and the set title will be e dot target dot value. Now what this will do, and what this onChange function will do, this will call this set title and it will pass whatever the value has been inserted into the input form field. Now into the value section, what we can do, we can dynamically add the title from this set title. So if I save it now, I have some error of use state because I haven't imported it. So let's just delete it and do the use state again, so it will automatically add it for me. Alright, so now if we go into our browser and if I open now, by the way, I have installed the React Chrome tool, so I have this components, so we can see through which component has which value. So if we click on add to do, we have this state. Now if I add, let's say something, so you can see this state has been updated. Now how this state has been updated? Because of this onChange method. So with the onChange, we are calling this set title from the use state hook, and we are updating the state of title. So that's fine. Now our next task or next challenge is to send or save the value from this field into some sort of global state. Now for that we actually need to have to use the context API of the React.js. Other than that we cannot do that smoothly. So let's open this context and open this to do context, and here we actually we actually need to import several things. We need to do the create context from the React, and also we actually need the use state maybe, or maybe later. So now we need to export const, and let's name it to do context, and we need to call the create context. So this is how we actually create the context of the React.js. Now also we need the some sort of provider for that, so we need to do export const provider, let's say to do provider, and it will have the props, and inside that we actually need to return something. Now this context API will hold the global store of your data. So for that let's do the const, and let's create the state for to do, and let's set to dos. So set to dos, with through this you can actually update the state of the to dos, and let's say use state, and we need to use the use state hook as well. So let's do the use state from here. Now at the beginning our use state will be a blank array, so the to do will be a blank array. Now we need to return the context provider of the to do, so to do context dot provider, and the value we need to pass, and inside that we need to send the value, whatever value we want. So we can send to do's and set to do's. So these values will be transpassed through the to do context provider and inside the props.children. All right, so let me explain to you again. So what is happening here, we are creating a context for the to do. Basically it's a global storage area, and we have this to do as a state. At the initial state it will be blank, there will be no data, assuming, and we need to return this context provider, to do context provider. Through that we have this props.children. So whatever values that has been passing from this to do context provider, that will be available for its children components as well. Now let's open this app.js, because there are some more things we need to do here, because we are enabling the context API. So here what we need, we actually need to import the to do provider from the context to do context, and we actually need to use it or wrap it up with the to do provider, so that the values that is coming from here will be available through all the child components that is inside the to do provider. So that is the thing we need to do into the app.js. All right, now let's go back to the add to do, and we have to do some more modifications here. So since we have like this context API ready from the to do context, we actually can call it initialize it here. So to do's, set to do's, and which is actually we can use through the use context. So that has been already imported at the top, and we also need to import the to do context that is from the context to do, or to do context. Now that needs to be passed through here. Now what is happening, so we are initializing this to do's and set to do's from the use context, and we are having the predefined values through the to do context as well. Now let's focus on this button. So we have this title that has been updated through the set title from this input field on change event, but we need to send or save the value or save this state, this title, into the main to do's. So that can happen from this button. So on click, let's add a function called add to do, and we need to create that function here, add to do, right? And it will be an arrow function, so we can prevent default, right? And from here, before adding the title into the to do's, we actually can have a check here. So if the title is blank or undefined, then we actually can have an alert message. We can say like field cannot be blank, and then we can just return. Now if the title has some value, then we can do new to-dos, and we can take the to-dos that has already been there. So this is the ES6 format to copying out all the previous arrays, and we can add the new array. So here maybe we can have some random ID, but I will add some package later to add the unique ID. For now, let's add just one, and the title will be just the title, and the completed we can make it false at the beginning. So then we can do set to dos and fill up with the new to dos. All right, so let's save it. So let's recap once again what we are doing. Hence we have created this to do context. So we have passing through the values. So this is the main state or global state or store where we are trying to save the values from add to dos. So that's why we are calling this to do context, and we have these states, but it is not, we are not using use state, we are using use context with this to do context provider. And through this button click of this on click add to do method, what we are doing, we are checking if the title is blank or undefined. If it is, then we are popping up an alert message and then returning it. If it is not, then we are actually copying out all the old to dos, and we are actually creating a new to do value with the predefined ID, although this will not be the case, and we are setting set to dos with the new to dos. Now let's go back and hit a refresh. Okay, so now we have this to do context provider, and you can see you have this state which is right now blank. Now if I try to add something, so if I click on add to do, you will see the state for the add to do is updated, and that is namely title. Now if I go back to the to do provider, right now it's still blank. So when you click on add, it should be added here. So if I click on add, you can see there is one value has been added, which is completed ID, and the title is there. So you can see if I add another one, and then it will be updated here as well. So this is basically the state of the context provider, not the state from this add to do. So that means our add to do is actually saving the value into the main to do context provider's state, that is this to dos. Now one thing I have noticed, and if I refresh, obviously the value will go away because we are not persisting the value yet. But I want to show you, if I click on here and add it, so it has been added here, but the field is not cleared out. So it's very easy to do that. We can do the set title to blank, right? And now if I refresh and try to add, so it will be cleared out. So we can add another thing, it will be cleared. Now if I click on with a blank value, it is saying field cannot be blank. So if you click on OK, so the value is not added, so there is only just two values here. So our add to do is actually technically working, but I want to show you one more thing, which is for the unique ID we actually need to install one package which is called UUID. So let's do that real quick. You can do npm install save dev UUID, and it should be done pretty quickly. Alright, so it's done. So let's rerun the package again, And here what we need to do, we actually need to import it. So I'm just copying it from my previous setup. So we are just importing it here, UUID, and we just need to use it here, UUID FIFA. That's it. So now if I go back and let's click on this and try to add something, it has been added, and you can see it has been added with a unique ID. So if I try to add another one, it will be added into the context provider state with a different ID. So that's what we was actually looking for. Now the next thing I want to do is to save these things into the local storage. Now, so there is actually, okay, some sort of warning. Okay, so to-do list is, so yeah, to-do list is actually not been used yet, so ignore that error for now. All right, so now let's do one thing. Before going into the persisting data, let's move into the to-dos. So right now the to-do is actually blank, so let's create the function to do, and it will have an arrow function, and we're going to export default to do. Alright, so let's return something from here, which is the individual to do. So let's have p, and let's do a class name here with to do item, and set that we actually need to have some input type, can be checkbox, and we maybe need to have the value later, and okay, so let's close that down. So let's remove the curly bracket for now. Let's just create the DOM first. We need the label as well, so HTML4, maybe the label will be the title of the to do, and we can also add a button here to delete it, and let's add the type to button. Let's add a class name here, you can say button delete, right? So this is the to do. Right now we have, and inside the to do list, let's do const to do list, and inside that we actually need to export default to do list, and we actually need to import the to do here, because to do will not be work directly, so we can do return from here with the to do, and we have this to do list. So to do list is coming from this to do list, it should be matched, so let's just recheck. Alright, So now if I go here, so you can see there is a static to-do list, which is obviously not coming from the state, but we have the layout. So let's go into the to-do again, and there's some things we need to do here, because this to-do will be looping through from the value of the context provider state. So actually what we need to make use of the state of the context provider. So let's add the to-dos and set to-dos from the use context, and we also need the to-do context as well. All right, now so here we have some more things to do. So let's say for the label, we have this with the to do, we actually can have the access, we can access the props, because these values is actually transpassing from the, you can see from this context to do context provider. So these values has been passing through these children, so we can have the access of props. So from here we can have the props dot title, right? And actually we right now we do not have the ability to use the props, because this props values is not even passed through the to do component, because let's keep the props here, because this to do is actually nesting through this to do list. So let's open the to do list first and do some work here. So let's make use of the context provider state. So set to dos, that is coming from use context, and we also need the to do context provider, because that is going to provide the things for us. And inside the return, what we will do, we will loop through this to do. Now at first let's check if the to dos dot length is greater than or equal to 1, then we are going to map the to dos, and it will have mapping through each of the single items, and we can pass it through the to dos. I think there's some mistakes. Okay, and other than that we can actually pass a message here. Let's say h4, and we can say no to dos, maybe no to do found, please add some. So what we are doing here, if the to do length is less than or equal to 1, then we are mapping through the to dos, and we are passing this component from the to dos. Other than that, we are just showing a message that there is no to do. Now here we can have the key of item dot unique id, because you know from the React that if we iterate something, then it needs to be a unique key for the DOM. Now we can also pass the id, which is obviously required. We can also pass the title, so we can say item dot title, and you can also pass the completed. So we can say item dot completed. Now these will be the props that has been that will be available into the to dos when we now try to access from the to dos. So now what we can do, we can do props dot title here, and probably what we can do into the to dos as well is to uh, for the HTML, for HTML we can say props dot id as well. For the input we can also pass the id, so props dot id as well, so it will be matching with the label and the id. So when we click on the label, the input will be accessible. All right, now for the value we can do props dot id, so it will have the values as well. So let's go back and hit a refresh. So right now there is nothing, but if we click on something, there is nothing has been showing right now because we need to fix some more things here. So into this to-do list, okay, so it should be more than, okay, let me add some more. So this has been added here. Okay, so the list is not showing. I need to check it why. Alright, we have found the mistake. We have added the component but we haven't returned it, so we need to return it. Right, so now if I check, you can see if I add some more, it will be added, and this is coming from the uh, uh, state of the context API. Now if I refresh, obviously there will be no data because the data is not persistent yet. Now let's go back into the to-dos again. So now the next task is, let's say we have added it, so our next task is to, when we check on this checkbox, it should be, the value should be updated from completed, from false to true, whatever we have added, and if we click on delete, the value should be deleted from the state. So let's start with the input first. Let's say on change, what we want to do is, let's say we want to run a function called complete to do. Let's say complete to do, and let's pass the event from here. Obviously this function needs to be created, so let's create it and do const, let's say completed to do, and we have this a. So now what we will do, actually, let's imagine when we click on this particular to do, then we actually need to filter the filtering out or mapping through the to do's and find out based on the matching ID, and we need to update the completed value from false to true or from true to false. So let's do const filter to do's, filter to do's is will be to do's dot map, and we are iterating through each item. And here what we will do, if item dot id is equal to e dot target dot value, right, then what we will do, if it is matching with the id and the targeted value, and if another check we need to do, if e dot target dot, sorry, we have messed it up. If we dot target dot checked, that means not only matching the value but it needs to be checked as well. Then item dot completed will be true. Other than that, item dot completed will be false. So what we are doing here, if the item ID and the targeted value is equal, if it is only equal, then it will stay completed. It will stay, the complete value will be stay false because we are unchecking it. But if it is checked, only when it is checked, then we will say that item dot completed is equal to true. Other than it will be false, right? And also finally we actually need to return the item, and at the end we need to set to-dos with the filter to-dos. Now in that way, when we, let's refresh, add some more, and if I open all up, let's say the first one, if we click on it, it should be updated. Yeah, it is updated to true. Now if I click on another one, the third one is updated. So now if we uncheck the third one, it will become false, and if you uncheck the first one, it will become false. So our completed and uncompleted is actually working. Alright, now let's move into the delete button. So what we want actually from here is, whenever we are clicking in any particular delete button, we actually need to have the ID from it, and then we need to filter out the to-dos and remove that particular item. So to do that, we actually need to have an ID field here as well, and we can use the props dot ID, and we can also have the on click. Let's do like let's say delete to do, and we're just passing the event. So obviously we need to create const delete to do, and okay, so let's do e dot prevent default, and let's do const fill, okay, const, let's say we can call it filter to do, and the filter to do will be to-dos dot filter, and we're going through all the items, right? And we'll just return item dot id if it is not equal to e dot target dot id. That does mean that if the value of the targeted id is not equal to items, then rest of the things we're gonna return, or we're gonna pass it through. So let's update the set to dos with this filter to do, right? Okay, So let's refresh it again, and let's add some more. So we have these three values. Let's remove the last one. If we click on delete, and you can see the last one is deleted. So let's add some tweak, and let's try to delete the last one. So this one is the last one. So if we click on that, so that particular item is deleted. So our deleting functionalities is also working fine. Alright, so far so good. The application is working as we expect. So we can actually add some to do from here. We can mark it as complete, and the data is actually based on that is updating. And also if we click on delete, the thing is deleted as well. We can check it from the components to do provider state as well. So there is only one. Now if I click on another, there is another is been added, and you can see the status completed is true, first one, and the second one is false. So everything is working as expected. And also we have this basic validations as well. Now the only problem is data is not persistent. So if we hit the refresh, data is not available into our application's local storage. So let's do that. Open the add to do, and here we actually need to use the use effect hook, and it is actually dependent on some state. So it will be dependent on the to do's. So whenever the to do's is updated, we are going to use this local storage dot set item, and we can pass the keys for to do's, and for that we can do JSON dot stringify, and we can pass the to do's. So in this way we will be able to save the values into the local storage. So now if I go back, and let's say to do one, if I add, you can see the values has been added. So let's say to do 2, and it has been added as well. Now let's check with the completed to true, I guess. Yes. And if I delete it, so it's been deleted from the local storage as well. So the value is actually saving into the local storage. Now the problem is if I refresh, still I cannot see any values, and these values is going away, because when you refresh the page, the to do is become blank. Because of that, the application, the local storage value is again updated because of this use effect, because we have said that whenever the to do is updated, do these things. So when you refresh the page, the to do becomes blank, the context API storage become blank, and so that has been updated with a blank array. Now to stop that, we need to go to the to do context, and we can do like const get to do's, and we can do JSON parse, and we can say local storage dot get item and the to do's. So we have this value. Now need to use this one. So whenever we have these values, then we have this, other than we have this blank array. So what we are doing, whenever we refresh the page, whatever value saved, when you refresh the page, we are getting the values from the local storage, if any. If it is, if there is any value with this get to do's, then it will have the get to do's as default, otherwise the default will be blank array. So now if we go back, and let's say to do one, and add to do 2, add. Now if we hit refresh, you can see the value is persisting as well. So now if I delete one and hit refresh, so the value is persistent as well. Now we can add some obviously more values. Now the only problem is if I click on this checkbox, You can see the value is true, so it should be checked when you refresh, right? So it has been added. Probably I have added the code already. Let's check. So yes, that is for this one. Let's just remove and show it to you again. So if I hit a refresh, you can see the first one value is true, but if I check on that, the checkbox is not staying as checked, so it should be staying as checked. So if all the values is true, but the checkbox is not checked. So for that, what we need to do, we can use const is completed. I'm doing it again for you so you will have the better visibility. So completed, then we can have the checked value, other than it will be blank, because we know for the checkbox we have a property called checked. So if it is checked, then the value is become checked, other than that it will not be checked. So the checked is actually depending on the is complete. So if it is completed, then it will be checked, other than that it will not. So you can see it is already been checked. Now if I uncheck this and hit a refresh, you can see the value is not checked, so the value is persisting. Now the last thing I need to do is to add the styling, but I'm not gonna waste any time for that. I'm gonna open the app CSS and paste the predefined CSS that I have already written. And if I go back, you can see there's beautiful layout. So let's test it again. Let's delete everything. So there is a value, there's a message. Now let's say wake up at 7, do some breakfast, prepare for the work. So maybe I have done this one, and maybe there is some garbage thing I need to delete, and hit a refresh, and you can see the value is persisting. So there you have it, the to-do app with the React.js. I hope you learned something from it. So until the next video, keep watching and learning.